feature. The community that resides in Kibra has for a long time struggled to be recognized as one of Kenya's ethnic groups. But the struggle to get national ID cards and community land spans decades, and as the election period draws close, Look Up TV's Warris Kimathi shines the spotlight on the woes of the Nubians of Kibra here in Nairobi. Now, in the second part of our special feature, the Nubian question.
For years, the Nubian community of Kenya has relentlessly fought to be recognized as one of the country's many ethnic groups. Their struggle, which spans across decades, has involved politics, backdoor deals, and unfulfilled promises, leaving hundreds unsure of where exactly they stand in their own country of birth.
For any other ordinary Kenyan, they can get an ID between 2 to 4 weeks. For a Nubian, it's between 6 months to infinity.
Koti ilikata shauri Wanubi warudishwe wapewa haki yao 4,129 acres.
Niko na waiting from sasa niko na miaka 9. Niko na waiting sijaipata ID.
This two-part film takes a look into a thorn in the flesh of Kenya's citizenship policy, the Nubian question. When his son returns from school, Mohammed Abdullahi has been home all day. He lives in Kangemi, Nairobi, with his wife and 2 children.
Nimezaliwa Kibra, Makina, na hospitali nyingine inaitwa Hoodley. Nimezaliwa 1993, na niko na miaka 29.
Mohammed is of Nubian lineage, and he does not have a national identity card, which he has been trying to get for close to 9 years running. His struggles are documented by this piece of paper that he's had for longer than he has had his son, Ali.
ID nilianza kutafuta nikiwa na miaka 20. Nihangaika mpaka hadi hiyo 2016 ndo nikapata hiyo waiting card. Sasa mimi nikakaa nikaambiwa nikae like 2 weeks niende niangalie kama ID yangu imetoka. After 2 weeks kwenda kuangalia kaambiwa bado. Kabla tena nikaambiwa tena niende nikae tena like 1 month. Nikuje niangalie kama itatoka. Nikakaa bado. Nikaendelea hivyo, kila nikienda naambiwa bado. Ilifikia mahali nikasema hapana, wacha niende niwaulize shida ni nini. Ndio mimi nikaenda nikatumwa niingie kwa huduma. Unaona, kuingia kwa huduma kaangalia kwanza, nilipata watu wengine hapo wakiangalia alafu wangasome jina yangu. Wanaanza mtafikiri yani kama wanakuogopa hivi. Hiyo nyakati ilikuwa mambo na magaidi na Al-Shabaab nini. So unajua si imagine yetu ya Kiislamu ni kama inaogopeka. Kwanza sikia mtu kana anaitwa Mohammed Abdullahi, kama maybe wanaogopa maybe ni gaidi.
Mohammed believes that on top of being from a minority group, Islamophobia is another reason for him not being granted his ID card, despite other young people his age having received their cards and gone ahead to secure employment and even education.
Watu wanaangalia tu hiyo waiting yako alafu anakuambia wanakurudishia, anakuambia mali ulikuwa ulienda kuanza kuregister ID yako, enda huko ulize shida nini. Unaona? Kabla tena narudi tena huko. Ukifika huko wanakuambia watolee tu photocopy alafu wanastampisha tu hapo hivyo, wanasema watashughulikia.
My name is Mustafa Mahmoud. I'm the Senior Program Manager with Namati, Kenya. I've been working on issues of citizenship for the past 9 years.
The struggle of the Nubian community in Kenya has been going on for years. And as Mustafa Mahmoud explains, the problem is as simple as targeted discrimination and exclusion of those deemed unfit to be Kenyan.
You see, the struggle of citizenship for the Nubian community emanates from their first history. Their history, they've been in the country as early as 1889. And if you look at the constitution, the independence constitution said that any person who was in Kenya by 13th December 1963 qualified to be a Kenyan. And the Nubian community was in Kenya before Kenya became a state, as early as 1889. So if you look at that angle, you look at they themselves being bona fide Kenyans. But unfortunately for them, they have to be subjected to differential treatment, from applying on certain days, to being asked for additional document, to being taken through different procedures, to also looking at waiting period that is excessive. For any other ordinary Kenyan, they can get an ID between 2 to 4 weeks. For a Nubian, is between 6 months to infinity.
Shafi Hussein is the director of the Nubian Right Forum in Kenya. He has been in the front lines fighting for the rights of young Nubian people to get national ID cards since the early 2000s.
And I do remember very well in 2003 is when the Nubian Council of Elders calls for demonstration. The first ever of its kind for citizenship, whereby they've petitioned the British government through British Embassy.
Shafi and his organization have presented a petition to Parliament through their local legislator that seeks to stop the implementation of Kenya's new proposed registration system known as Huduma Number Bill.
I do that specifically because if you go through the Kenya Constitution, Constitution 2010, it is speaking about equity, inclusive, but Huduma number was meant to leave some communities outside.
And it was about issues of vetting. Why is it that the community has to be vetted by the intelligence while getting a document that is a national right? And the committee came, there was a hearing here at Moi Girls. The committee came all the way to Kibra because Moi Girls is in Kibra. They had the petition, they had community members, and they came up with a favorable ruling. And they said that the Honorable CS Machangi was given 90 days, which elapses on the 21st of this month, to recognize the Nubian community as one of the ethnic groups in the country.
The controversial Huduma Bill was introduced in Parliament on December 21st, 2021. The bill, which is modeled around the United States Social Security number system, seeks to give every Kenyan a centralized number that will be required by every Kenyan seeking government services. For Nubians who are still striving to get national IDs and be registered on the National Registry, the bill is simply bad news. Because if the Huduma rollout is completed without them being included on the National Register, they will most likely end up as stateless people.
You cannot tell people you are migrating to Huduma and you cannot address the discrimination issues on ID card.
In other countries like South Africa, when you're going to access a service and they realize you don't have a document and you are an eligible citizen, that point of service becomes a point of registration. So instead of telling someone you cannot go to school because you don't have a birth certificate, when you go to school, can we have mobile registration at schools?
For thousands of young people born in poverty here in Kibra, getting a good education and getting papers is the only sure way to get a job out in the city. But if you're born in the Nubian community, even getting a national ID could prove to be a struggle.
Mama Aminata is a long-time resident of Kibra. Her grandson turned 25 years old this year, but she's almost giving up on following up on his national ID.
Na hata kusoma. Sasa alisoma tu dini. Nimejaribu mpaka nikaluza hapo, ndio unaona amefikisha hiyo miaka 25. Kwa sababu hata tukienda sasa, mimi nikiitishwa, hata mimi mwenyewe sikuona babu yangu, mimi naenda kutoa hiyo certificate ya babu wapi?
Just like Mohammed in Kangemi, Mama Aminata also strongly believes that the difficulties her grandson has faced in getting his ID are tied to their Nubian roots and deep-running Islamophobia within the Kenyan government.
Na mimi huona hii sasa ni ubaguzi ya dini inaweza kuwa. Kwa sababu mtu anatoka boda anapata kipande. Na huyu mama yake ni mzaliwa hapa, babu yake ni mzaliwa hapa, asipate kipande.
For those members of the Nubian community who have gotten the ID cards, most of them have had to undergo a standard vetting procedure that other Kenyans in Kibra are excluded from. And there are many young Nubian men who do not usually make it to the other side of this rigorous due diligence exercise.
I happen to go all over the country. I have been to Northeastern and specifically Garissa, and I witnessed the vetting. The vetting there is not the vetting which our boys and girls are being conducted here.
For Mohammed, who is a qualified chef, he now has to depend on whatever his wife makes to sustain the young family, since most of the work opportunities available to him require him to have his national ID card.
Mimi kama mimi niko na waiting from sasa niko na miaka 9. Niko na waiting na sijaipata ID mpaka sasa. Na mimi naona kuna watu wengine wana apply like 1 week ama 2 weeks washapata ID zao. Why me? Miaka 9 sijapata ID. Na niko na waiting.
Since he moved out of Kibra close to 10 years ago, Mohammed lives here in Kangemi with his wife, 2 children, and they started waiting card, which he says is the only thing that stands between him and his Kenyan citizenship.
Even as Shafi and his forum rushes against time to get all their people registered before the window is closed in their faces by the Huduma Bill, there are more questions than answers concerning Kenya's citizenship policy and the treatment of minority groups in the country. Warris, Kimathi, Look Up TV in Nairobi.